There we go. For some reason, every couple weeks it wants to do that. But here sounds like we have some volume. Okay, let me make sure everything else is set up before we get further into this live stream, and we will go from there. Um, welcome to the channel, guys. This is Reliable Rudy. As you guys know, I am not a licensed financial advisor. I'm simply just sharing my opinion with this technical analysis and stock market recap. I believe in the short term, stocks, ETFs, equities, indexes, you name it, is all just a big voting machine. In the long run, I believe it is a weighing machine, and stocks and everything else will trade near its intrinsic value over the long term. I'm a firm believer of that. As I said, just simply stating my opinion in this analysis. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. I even made mistakes today, and I had some good stuff happen for me today. I try to stay consistent with what I like to do and go from there. Uh, but that being said, before we go over to the sticky notes posted for today, we'll just do a quick recap on the Nasdaq. I'd say Nasdaq gaps up. How does it act from the gap up? It was trading down. I'm sure there are people out there that were like, "Oh, what the heck? Why is the Nasdaq going down?" Because all it's done is gone up. But I believe strength is your biggest indicator, and the Nasdaq is very strong. And gap fill buyers are there. I would be surprised if this is a top. But one thing that I've kind of been keeping my eye on is just a simple fib tool from the top of the move, bottom of the move. I've talked about this many times. And where do we gap up over today? All we did was gap over the 618, retrace down, filled the gap. Does it trade down from here? I'd be surprised. But as you guys know, I think the 702 is the deadliest of all retracements, and a lot of people don't even have it on their chart. And you guys know I like a good gap fill, buy and sell. And we do have a nice gap down back in April 5th of 2022 where we gapped down, and this gap has not been filled, and it kind of meets up right around that 702. I will be respecting this, and we will talk about one of the other sticky notes. What happens from this moment? I don't know. Could it run higher? Could it get rejected? I don't know. We're going to find out here probably in the next couple weeks. Who knows? Maybe we even get there tomorrow. But I've shared my opinion on the Nasdaq. You guys can go look at any of my live streams. I'm sure I've covered the Nasdaq every single day. Is it explained the same exact way? No, but I believe you can actually even go to some of the videos I posted back in August. There is videos, not live streams, videos where I kind of break down what I'm looking for in a nice 5-wave structure. I'm looking for a higher low confirmation where we get a couple, and I'm looking for a retrace up to that 702. You can go look at the video, you can go find it. You can't fake it if you posted it back in August. Uh, but that's why I try to stay consistent with what I do. I found something that works for me. That does not mean that's going to work for you. Just because I'm saying that I made a video back in August where, oh, I called that this was going to run up to here. That doesn't mean I'm going to be right next time. That doesn't mean I'm even going to be right this time. It's about staying true to how you invest, finding something that works for you. Maybe I just got lucky this time. Who knows? Maybe the next time I'm not going to be so lucky. A lot of people don't understand that, you can do something really good and not understand that it's actually your worst nightmare. You do something that works one time and you think it's going to work for you another time, and then that other time it doesn't work for you. Well, maybe you had more risk on that other time, and it actually ends up hurting you more than what you benefited the first time. That is one of the main things I try to stay consistent with is understanding taking the same approach every single time. And that's what I'm trying to preach on this channel. So I hope you guys like the content that we get into. Uh, but I mean, I've talked about it in that video. If you don't want to go look at the video, I am still not counting out that this could just be a simple retracement. This drop, a 5-wave structure, is simply could just be a wave 1 pattern where we get a wave 2, and who knows if a wave 3 pattern comes in and then just follows the course where we then backtest the bottom of these lows and potentially even have a further fallout in the market. I'm not counting it out until I get some more confirmation and some more uh, charting that I can go over to determine that. And I can understand a bull case. I can understand a bear case. I believe that there's weight to both sides of this. Uh, but simply just looking at the stock market to GDP ratio, there is a fair argument to the bear side. And looking at the charting, I could also see where the charting has a bear case scenario as well. But then you look at the bull cases, the Nasdaq has been very, very strong. This move that the Nasdaq has had is no slouch, and it shouldn't be taken lightly, in my opinion. So that's my take on the Nasdaq, and will it play out like that? I do not know. I don't know. I'm just a guy here. I am just a guy sharing my opinion. So that being said, let's pull over the Twitter for today, as we posted some sticky notes. Starting with, this was a Friday sticky note. Here's our first sticky note of the day. Got 3 views. Could have been better. Who knows? Enphase. I've talked about Enphase, I believe, a couple weeks back, where I stated that, there's a long-term channel and there's a short-term channel. Let's see what happens going forward. Well, now I said interesting setup respecting the long and short-term channels. A 165.20 gap with 167 tops. Strength is clearly there, plus 181, and it has some decent support at 160, 162. I have one share at 160 and change. One single share. And I did not buy any today, even though we did get those tests of those 167 tops. But let's go into the chart and look at Enphase. So I do not have the long-term chart, but if I was I got a clean chart right here, guys. Clean chart. Here's your strength. We actually close up above that 181, up at 208. So pretty clear strength if you ask me. But this is the channel that I was talking about for a long-term look. And you have a nice parallel channel on the top end. Kind of looking like that. Is it set perfectly? Probably not. But it's respecting it for the time being. Looking into the short term, I would say you have some sort of short term channel, sort of like that. And it's respected them both to the upside and the downside. We are even leaving a wick into it. We left wicks into it over here. We even hold wicks into it on the bottom end. So I think it's a interesting setup, especially when looking at the positive break right here. You get a nice green candle that respects the uptrend. You got some wick buying in that comes in at positive strength, and now we get the gap up. And here's what I was talking about with the 140 or 167 tops right here. That comes in at 167.04. I hope you guys can see that. I'll get this out of the way for you guys. But you have multiple wicks into that, and we actually get a wick low pretty dang close. The low on the day is 167.30, so not quite down to that. But then, what else do we leave, guys? We leave this gap up from 165.20, give or take. So looking at the 15-minute chart, you can see the very opening candle of the day is the wick low near those 167. So this was clearly some sort of breakout price as it's fighting to get over that 167. And finally we get the gap up and it never looked back. But we did reject the top end of the channel and we never got back up to the top end of that channel. There is a better look at the top end of that channel. If you wanted to move it down more so like that, just tighten the range, that's more than reasonable. But I like staying true to my daily range right there. So we'll leave it right there and see if we can actually get further breakout. So looking forward with this name, I will be very interested if this pulls back and starts showing me some support hold at 167 where I have no problem averaging up. That's one thing that I am very different with compared to a lot of investors is a lot of people would rather, oh, I wish I would have bought it right there. Uh, where I'm on the other end, where I'm okay buying it higher if I have more conviction that I can even sell it at a higher price. I have no problem buying high and selling higher. And I think on this name in particular, you do have strength in your name. Could you have just market ordered in, even a breakout over this 169.5? If we just mark these tops right here, let's go back to that 15-minute chart. you can see, where do we pull back to when we reject the top end of that channel? We come right back into 169 whole, and this didn't look back again, and we close, $5 in the money had you just been looking for the retest of this support area over here. So that's kind of what I was looking at with Enphase, and I think it's definitely an interesting chart setup and worth keeping an eye on. Um, So moving forward, let's go back over to the sticky notes. That was the first sticky note for the day. And actually, BAC 28 holds for now. Strength plus 48. X dividend date. That is the date that you have to own the stock ahead of time to be able to qualify for the dividend. And I simply just put on another tab over sell off after the dividend. Question mark, guys. And I've seen it before. Would I be surprised if it happened? No, I wouldn't. And this is also why I say size accordingly, especially when you're trying to time short-term fluctuation. Just to go off of the reasoning that it's paying a dividend, I'm going to get in before the dividend. Uh, that dividend still gets taken out of that free cash flow, and what happens after that dividend gets paid. It's tough to say. It is tough to say because you don't know who else got in at a certain price, and maybe he's just holding for that dividend, and then he's going to liquidate his position and try to find a better entry. You just don't know. So size accordingly, and I said over 28.20 could catch a bid. So let's go take a look at BAC. Over, and we said to close at 28.25. Now, what was I talking about when I said over 20? Over 20. I was mainly just looking over at this where we wicked. So this is your opening candle right here, straight down. Now look at how our 28 holds. It gives up a little bit, but under 28. Somebody likes this name at this 28 level. As you can see, this holds 28 just beautifully. Now, all I did in my purchase in BAC was I simply just put an alert over this 28.15 right there, and we can actually go look back over here. You can see my alerts, but this triggered my BAC crossing over 28.15. It triggered. All I did is I went over and I market ordered a few shares. That was all I did. Nothing special. I think the fill actually came in at the top of this candle at 28.16, I believe it was. So just 1 penny over my fill. And I looked at it as, 28 holds and we're setting two green candles like this. I like it. Could I have been a little special and said, I'm looking for a retest of this. So as it breaks that resistance right there, I'm looking for a retest of it at 28.12. I probably could have got a 28.12 fill, but I just wanted to respect the alert. I wanted to respect the level, and I went from there. So I dipped into a little bit more BAC. But I mean, you guys can go to a lot of my live streams, any live stream where I talk about BAC, and I am all for the breakdown in price down over to this neckline around 26 flat and the gap fill at 24.33. Is it set perfectly over there? It doesn't look like it. It looks like the gap is actually at 24.31. I'm all for it. I think this is a name that I have the long-term mindset, and I'm looking at this name as a long-term play. If the price, I'm completely fine taking a company that I feel is fairly priced at a decent valuation for a long-term play and holding that against me. So I'm already telling myself I like it down at 24. We'll just go from current price. 24.30. I'm already telling myself, hey, I'm okay holding this position 14% out of the money. Does that mean that it's going to work for you? No. This is the way that I like to invest. I'm not telling you to go out and say, hey, BAC, this is golden for the long term. I personally like it for a long term play. That is it. I will leave it at that. But I felt we'll just clear the chart, looking at it from this perspective. The way that it has held this 28 level, I am completely okay building a position as long as it is holding this 28. What happens after this, I do not know. I do know that we have a gap fill down at 27.35. How does the price act if we get down there? If we end up holding these 27.25s, is there some sort of uptrend, an early look to some sort of channel that I'm not seeing? You know, and I keep telling myself that, you know, you get the gap up and it holds above this. Could this be some sort of sideways consolidation? Well, anytime you get sideways consolidation on a tight range channel like this, all it would take is a price to get underneath of these lows right here. Let's say underneath 26.70 or even 26. We'll say 26 flat. I'm expecting that anybody who's gotten in over this period, potential stop loss is one, could be a catalyst for a driven price to the downside. And who knows what happens after that. So I'm building this position accordingly and staying true to a plan that I have laid out for this name. I've talked about BAC enough. I don't want to keep going over this constantly, but I felt 28 was respectable as it held it, and that's why I bought some shares of BAC today. Moving forward, Vail. We talked about Vail, I believe, is on Wednesday or Thursday. We talked about the 1277 gap and the 1313 gap. We wanted to see how it acted from there, and we wanted it to present us a level to buy. I did not buy any, and I said I was on the bid at 1250. I can go pull up my account and see if those got filled. Actually, I'll just go and look at Vail. Let's just go take a look at Vail. But what did I say about the... I said weak name to watch. I said it was a weak name to watch last week, and strength is still not quite there. But I said 1250 support. Does it hold 1250? I want to see it hold this 1250. And to the downside, that's the down arrow right there. Gaps to the downside, we have 1145 and 1127. I will look at this as a potential buying window. Whether the price holds there or not, I'm going to respect it. And I was on the bid, small orders in front of 1250. So let's go take a look at it. And you can see that the wick low for today comes in at a low of 1258. I believe my order was actually at 1255, so I don't think I got the fill on this. Uh, but I do have this 1250 marked as support. So let's look at why we have 1250 marked as support. Well, to start off, we have some wicks going into 1250, and I see we get a gap down around this 1250, and we reject it to the top end side. And this is your uptrend. You know, we also have a potential uptrend that is meeting in around this 1250. So I think 1250 is pretty decent support. Uh, does that mean that it's going to be a golden entry? No, that does not mean that. But even looking into, let's pull up like an hour chart. And I'll show you why I also like 1250 is because we put in this nice double bottom off of this trend line around a little under 12, and I look at this as a potential neckline trade. So there's your 1250. Let's mark that right on the money. There we go, 1250. And you can see we have held 1250s pretty well, and we didn't even have the weakness to get down to 1250. So looking over at the daily, we can see our strength. This is why it's a weak name in my eyes, is we are sitting at 194 for your strength. And you know why I like this name is, you know, I had a very good entry when I was a lot worse of an investor over here, and I actually cut this name in the 14s, and I hated myself. Well, here's where we re-entered in off of this name, and we actually exited this position over here around our negative break as it was giving up support right here around the 16s. And you know, when I stayed true, I said 1313. I want to see this gap end up getting filled. So this was last week. You can see we wicked into it, and you can see here's our 77s. Our 77s got filled today. So we filled that 77 gap, and we actually set a close right around it. So I believe this is a name that you can keep on watch. See if that 1250, if we start getting some sideways consolidation, uh, does it present you an entry where you can maybe get a pop up to like retest 13, it rejects it, it holds 1250 again, and as we set a price higher than that initial pop, that could be a potential entry that I'm looking at. So Vail, weak name on watch, and I'm going to definitely keep my eyes on that, and I'll keep those orders in front of 1250. Small size. I just want to get a nice entry into this position, and I look at this as a long-term play as well. Um, I don't want to go into any more technicals than that, but that is how I view it. Moving forward, trim big tech. They are strong, and I would look at big tech as Nasdaq names. I believe Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, Meta, hmm, Nvidia for sure. I'm sure there's some other big tech names in there that qualify as a Nasdaq name. If you are just tuning in and skipped forward and you're sitting at this price or at this time of the video, uh, rewind to the beginning when I talked about the Nasdaq, and that is my bear case scenario. And one thing that I say in the sticky note is they are strong. I'm not denying that these Nasdaq big tech names are strong. Let them run. Let them run. Worth a trim 5 to 10%? Yeah, I firmly believe that trimming some of those names down could benefit you a lot in the long run. Uh, when is the run too extreme? I don't know. If the Nasdaq goes and blasts through all-time highs, I would expect those big tech names to continue benefiting from that. Uh, it's just not my cup of tea long term. If I'm looking at starting a new position into something right now, these big tech names, I'm going to look elsewhere and I'm going to try and find value elsewhere for more longer term investments. That is how I look at them. Does that mean that those are bad companies, these big tech names? No. No, there's a reason why the price has run the way that it has. One, it has some good AI catalysts, of course. But I mean, you put enough great investors with the tools out there to be able to identify companies. It's no coincidence that a lot of great investors, come to the same conclusion that these big tech names with nice margins are going to prosper in the long term. But when does the price get to a point where it's too much? I don't know. I don't know when that is. So I'm just gonna stay away from it. That's how I'm playing it, and we'll go from there. Uh, so moving forward, oil. We talked about this. Let it breathe. You know, how do we act at the mid 60s? Let the market present an entry. With anything, I want the market to show me in the short term some sort of entry that I can continue building my positions on. Now looking at oil down 4.5% on the day. This is not the beauty of a chart. Here's your strength. As I've stated many times, strength is not guaranteed. I look at strength as the house of the casino. Does the casino win every single time? No, the casino doesn't win every time. This is the brutality of short-term trading sometimes is when you're trying to bet that more people are looking at the same stuff as you and that they are actually going to buy in the short term, it can do this on you. And we talked about this uptrend. What happens on this uptrend? Well, we have another uptrend. Let's see how it acts mid 60s. If it wants to get down there, this is your support. Anything lower than this, the people in off these wicks are now losing money. And what more downside do we have? We have some support down here at low 60s. That actually meets in around the neckline, where I'll just mark that neckline and the retest of that. That's at 61. Uh, that actually runs over to the tops over here, so that's at 60, 80. I mean, we have some decent support in these 60s. Is it going to hold? I don't know. You have some support here in the upper 50s. You have some support here at 50. You also have a neckline trade if you look at this as a double bottom. Who knows? Oil comes down to 43. But what I do know about oil is, they're putting up good margins. They're uh, buying back shares. They're paying dividends or increasing those dividends. And those are all things that I look at in terms of looking at a long-term investment. What happens in the short term, I don't know. Uh, but at this moment in time, they're returning value to shareholders, and that is what I'm looking to build into for long-term positions. So that's what I look at with oil. I'd say just let it breathe. You're getting a fresh negative break. Does this uptrend have any weight? So we're up sitting. Can we reclaim 70? Okay, well now you have previous lows that you have to get through at 71. And one of the big drivers of this rejection, we talked about this top and getting over 74. I wanted to see over 74. Well, could have been a bear trap or a bull trap. As we set a close above that 74, one, it gave a hard rejection. It tried to reclaim, but it was not able to get over 74. I think the true breakout price now I would shift it a little bit above this. And one thing I could have noticed is these previous lows. We were never able to set a close above those previous lows at 74.20. So maybe I was just a little bit off, maybe 20 cents. I need to give it a little bit more time. But I would say a nice indicator would be call it a mid 70s, 75. If this gets over 75, I would not be surprised to see this go test up to the next area of resistance where we're talking about a breakout price up at 84. Wouldn't be surprised. Does that mean it's going to happen? I don't know, guys. I really don't know. I do know I do like oil long term. Does that mean that you should just go send all of your money in oil? No. No, size accordingly, guys. I'm just a guy sharing my opinion here, as I've stated multiple times. So, moving forward with oil, I think let it breathe, give it a little bit of time. Uh, is it a terrible time to buy oil? You know, it could be. So, I don't know. Moving forward, PayPal. Strength negative 65. Please break down 60s. I've talked about PayPal a few times. I thought the earnings report was decent. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary that would really scare me away. A lot of what I see a lot people saying is that increased competition is a big problem for this name, and it very well could be. But I see them buying back shares. I see them increasing revenue. I see the margins. I think they decreased just a little bit, so maybe that's part of the concern for the increased competition. But I think they're doing what they really don't have that much debt. I think they pay off all their long-term liabilities in 3 years, and the interest expense increase was really not that much. Which I think when looking at any company, you should keep an eye on the debt that they have and the interest expense that the company is taking on as well. But the big thing, the buying back shares, I look at it as a long-term play. If 60s can hold, I would say an entry is approaching near. Uh, does it have to trade sideways for a while? It very well could. But I'm thinking long term with this name. I like this name long term. So let's go take a look at PayPal and see where it closed. I know it was below that 60 early in the day. Oh wow, it actually closed up at 62, over 62. Wow. A slight increase in volume as well, and strength negative 55. I have a 63.50 marked. That's just saying that you're getting over top of these lows and this wick top right here. Is it a buy at that point? I don't know. Maybe it has to trade sideways just a little bit more. But maybe we are talking about this name breaking over 63 half, and I'm talking about buying it. I don't know. But I do like this name. Does it have some sort of descending channel downward? It's possible. It's possible you have some sort of descending channel downward. I really want to see this name break down 60s. I really do. Uh, and is 60 just a cut in stone? You only have a little shoulder of support right here at 60s. But man, if this got down to like 40s, in the 40s, I think it's a no-brainer long. Does that mean dump all your money into it? No, size accordingly with any investment that you have, especially when you're going with an individual ticker. But it also gives me as I zoom into it a little bit more. All I did was mark this top. I really didn't even see this, but I marked it right at a gap fill. So I mean, if this is where this wants to come down to, I am all for this name at 44.40. I'm all for it. Sign me up. Sign me up even at the start of filling this gap at 46. If we seen a price of PayPal get down into these 40s, I would be preaching, whether it's right or wrong, that this is going to be the meta of 2023. When Meta got underneath 100, I thought that was way too extreme. And look at what Meta's doing right now. I mean, everyone was counting out Meta. And what was Meta doing? They increased their capex. They were buying back shares. Were they good shares at the time? Probably not. Uh, they were decreasing margins a little bit. They didn't really have the most revenue growth. As you get bigger, sometimes it's hard to grow as a company. Uh, But now looking at Meta right now, it's like, oh my gosh, all they did was decrease their capex a little bit, and everyone just flooded into it. Is that what's going to happen with PayPal? I don't know. I don't know. But I do think that this is a value name down here. Does it have the weakness to get under 50? I don't know. I don't know. I'd be surprised. But we'll start with 60. Can it hold 60? Uh, if not, uh, how does it act in the 50s? Is there some levels that we can build in the 50s? If it holds 60, if it gets over 64, is it a buy? I don't know. Long story short, I like this name for the long term, and I have a long term mindset with this ticker, and I'm okay playing the patient game. I really want to see 60 give up, where I can truly build a position that I want, and be confident, not even looking at the price on a daily basis. I didn't mean to hit space bar there. But yeah, that was PayPal. The other one, BTI, I like low 30s value. I've talked about BTI a few times. Your strength is negative 20, give or take. Uh, it filled the 32.22 gap. How it acted from there, I'm not really sure, but I know there's gaps to the downside, 31.11 and 27.64. Patience, let her present the entry. Let her present the entry. That is what I will say about BTI. But let's go take a look at BTI. I know it had that 32.22 gap, and it looks like we traded at, we said it closed at 32.32. So, there was a little bit of trading underneath that, and it had the strength to set a close above that gap fill. Is that the start of something? I don't know. It could be, but here's a gap fill that we had marked, and we do wick through it as of right now. Your strength's still sitting at negative 118, so nothing really has changed in the strength. That's still a weak name. But looking at this, we don't really have any direct correlation off of that gap, but underneath it as we get closer to the 32, gets bought up, sets a higher low. Now look at this, guys. This is what I'm talking about. Let it present an entry. Would this been a decent entry at the end of the day as it reclaims over the top of this neckline? Now, where is the neckline at? 32.32. The top of that goes to 32.32, right where the gap is at. And it just so happens that that turns into a potential, maybe breakout area where you do get some increased volume. You get a positive break on a 15-minute chart. Is there any weight to this? I don't know. We'll see tomorrow. We'll see if this catches a bid. I do have a trend line drawn right here that we're breaking through. Maybe that's a bear catalyst that maybe we're seeing looking for more downside. But where are your gaps to the downside? No gaps in there. It looks like we have a 31.11 gap and have some support. That should be a support written line. And then here's your 27.65. Didn't trade down here very long. I like the value of this name. I think they have a catalyst for growth. Their margins are excellent. You're getting a nice dividend. Uh, Sustainable for the long term. I look at it that way with high margin. Maybe they have a little bit too high a debt. I know they took on some acquisitions over here. Has it fallen enough? I don't know. Uh, but I would say right around this 27 was the back test of the neckline that got retested, and you get your extended over top of these highs. Oh, it's never coming back to the neckline. And we have 1 day of trading at that neckline. 1 day. I repeat, 1 day. Wow, look at that entry right off the neckline. Does that mean that it's going to be golden next time? I don't know. Maybe. But I do like the value of this name in the low 30s, and I think it's worth keeping your eye on it. So that was BTI. I believe that was the last one that we posted, and we posted just the live stream right there. But we do have a couple notable ones. We had a sticky note for Workiva last week. We said we like this for a bull flag continuation. Here's that break through the gap fill. Beautiful green candle that it puts through there. Beautiful. I mean, just beauty. Talk about presenting a breakout level. Boom, right there. Just pull the trigger, pull the trigger. Boom, look at that follow through. Trades right down to the level above your resistance that turns into support now. You gap up, you try to push up, you gap up, you trade down, you fill the gap on the money, and now we trade up to here right near a breakout price where I'd say your breakout price is probably 97.50. Give it that whole quarter, we push up to 97.20s right here. We wick up above that a little bit. But I would say 97.50. And why do we wick right here? I see no other reason why we wick right there other than this gap is filled. Now, when we're over here, now we don't really have to worry about it, is the way I look at it. You're out. I would respect this 101.25. If this is some sort of retracement where we're getting a 5-wave structure to the downside, uh, 90, 98, 19. If it's a retracement from up here, that pulls it up to around 99. Okay. Is there something there? Is it worth trimming? Maybe respect 100 flat, where if we pull back over here, that last retracement's meeting up around there. Is it worth trims? We started the position of the day. Let's go to the 15-minute chart and look at how I entered into this. I showed pretty good patience here. Whether you like it or not, I was proud of it. Here's your gap up. Here's your wick top up to 97.30s. Top right there. Intraday gaps down keeps me away from it. We intraday gap down again. Where do we gap down to? Right to the gap up. Right to the gap up. You trace up, you try to fill the intraday gap. Okay, finally this wick actually does fill that gap. You can see we gap down from here, we fill that gap. I look at this as a pull of a bull flag. I'm looking for the next 3 candles, 3 red candles to present me an entry. Boom, boom, boom. There's your 3 red candles. I was on the bid, top of this candle, gave it to 95.75. 95.75. Let's just go mark it. There's your 95.75. We don't get the fill. That sucks. It sucks missing a fill right here. And it sucks saying to yourself, hey, I'm going to have to buy this at a higher price. As this candle is not showing me any weakness to the downside. Now, another big part of this bull flag, I look at it as a bull flag, is you are getting nice green volume in this move and decreased red volume. That's a nice indicator. Now, when we take out this wick high, when we are taking out the body of this candle, what does the volume also tell you? Here's your next candle. It's showing you a nice green candle on that 4th one, and you also have a slight gap up at the shaved bottom. Beautiful. Exactly what I'm looking for. Next candle, you get a gap up, you fill the gap, and you have your increased volume. That catalyst pushes you to the upside, and we set a close over $1 in the money from the 96 entry. I was very proud of myself for this. But that's a good example of what I'm looking for something to present you an entry. The way I looked at this presented an entry to pull the trigger on this name. And I was talking about this name as, it's got good support at 92. I didn't buy it down here. This is a prime example of you can buy something higher if you have the conviction that you can sell it at an even higher price. And that's what I looked at with Workiva. I also knew it had the 50-day that was rolling in around here, around 94.80, I believe. So we set the close below that 50 period. You gap up above that 50 period. You fill the gap. The buyers are there off the gap. You reclaim the 50. You got a nice bull flag pattern. Are you going to pull the trigger or not? Are you going to pull the trigger or not? I pulled the trigger. Is it going to pan out for me? Who knows? Maybe we get a fat gap down underneath 90. I don't know. I don't know. But I felt it presented a trade, and that is why I pulled the trigger on it. Another buy that we had today, not the best press release around, but I played with the volatility a little bit with IEP. This is the Carl Icahn fund. He manages this fund. Carl Icahn Enterprises LP Depository. There have been, if you don't know about this whole news catalyst with it, it's a Hindenburg report on a short report. And I respected the uptrend. I'll show you where my entries were. I had 3 different entries. and they're still marked on this chart actually. Uh, so first entry, the 15 minute doesn't present it. If you're looking at this, you're looking like, why'd you buy it there? But the better picture, I believe, is your 30-minute chart where all I did, I marked the top of this body candle and it met width and support. So there's your first fill. One, it's meeting in with one of my levels. Two, second entry, around my level off the wick top. And three, off of these wicks where we wick into it a couple times. Where was my out? I had an out underneath 2045. I was willing to give it all the ways down to here where it's probably support, but that chart setup doesn't look. Also, with these wicks, you have a nice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 wicks into this uptrend. Pretty good follow through off of it. Uh, what I'm looking for this to run up to the gap where I can have some outs, respect the previous low, and go from there. Uh, but that is what I seen with this, and I don't have the most size on it. All I did was respect it. Another notable one that I have been watching, we could talk about Ford, but I mean the downtrend that I had set on Ford, I seen no reason to sell any shares for a gain. Now it's a gain. People were probably laughing at me when I was starting Ford, but we gap up and it was showing me wicks in the top of the downtrend. So I was really interested in where it gapped up to, and does it have to retrace down to this gap before it makes any further move? Maybe. But looking at the day, it does have some resistance in right here that I could respect, but strength of 286. I would be surprised if this was the top short term. And why? Another part of why I say that is because this was your breakout. This was your breakout right around that 12 level. Nice green candle with increasing volume. You hit the gap up. Didn't really have much weakness to retrace down to this 12-10 gap. So I mean, uh, that was kind of what I was seeing with Ford. But I see no reason to sell any of the shares, and that is what I went with. Another buy that we had that was actually pretty early in the day. I don't know why I didn't talk about this earlier. Was Intel. I was very happy with this buy today. Not just because the price is up. I mean, it's always nice to take a trade on something and the price is up. But this is one we talked about last week where we had this gap fill with direct correlation. I went on live stream saying I called out the gap on the money last week. I didn't buy it because I said to myself, this will present me some sort of entry at a later date. Now, do I look at this as an entry at a later date? Well, one, Friday's candle, nice volume, 71 million in volume with a nice green candle. It gives you a gap up over top of this level. All I simply said is I will buy that gap. I will buy that gap. I had two fills on this name, one at 29.25, one at 29.10, and one off of 29 flat that doesn't get filled. You can see up here as it shows the lows. 29 flat right off of the gap. It closes at 28.98. I said I'm buying the gap. 29 flat. It shows low. 29 flat right here. No fill. What type of highway robbery is that? Sometimes that's just the way it works. Sometimes you have the money entry and you don't get the fill, and that's part of it. You can't be perfect all the time. But going into a 5-minute chart, I guess you can kind of see the entries. Um, the low of this candle doesn't get to my 29.25, but this one fills it. Now I wasn't buying it off of this. I was just trying to get fills on the name and average into the position that I already have. This next candle wicks me through 29.10. Nope, it doesn't. This candle, I get to 29.10, and there is your gap fill that it just barely doesn't reach at 28.98. And look at that, 29 flat. It was there. Let's go to a 1-minute chart. See how long this traded there. Look at that. I'll be dang. You have a microsecond of this trading at 29. A microsecond. And look at the volume increase on a 1-minute chart. This is almost 200K volume that came in the matter of 2 minutes. So that's what I seen with Intel. I felt it presented the entry for me, and that is what I went with for Intel. Does that mean that this is how it works out every time? No. I put the orders in. I wasn't even looking at the name when I put the orders in. I was looking elsewhere, and that's kind of where we went from there. And I got the fills that I wanted. So that's kind of what I was looking at. Is there some luck involved? No. I look at it as I was respecting the levels that it presented. We go back over to the daily chart. You gap up above that level. You guys know I like buying gaps, and I respected it. And we're setting a close right around that 30. After hours it's down a little bit. I'm okay. I like the press that a lot of the tech. I talked about big tech early in the day, and you guys know my opinion on tech. You guys know my opinion on the Nasdaq, and I just feel Intel hasn't presented that. I look at Intel as a long-term play. Uh, Obviously, the price action has not been like a big tech name. So I look at the catalysts around the AI space, and I think Intel could be a benefiter of it. And I pulled the trigger on some Intel shares today. Another notable name, yes, it was a little busy for me today. We added to some of the 3M. I was on the bid at 95 flat. Let's just clear the chart. I was on the bid at 95 flat. I seen late in the day that this candle does not wick me. We get to a low of 95.20. I just said to myself, I think 95 has some decent support in right here. I think you have support at 95. I was respecting the whole flat number. 95.20 was low of the day. I looked at it late in the day and I thought it presented an entry. Here's where you're trying to get down to 95, trying to get down to 95, trying to get down to 95, and all I did is had an alert, and that alert gets triggered, and I just bought the shares. I said, maybe I'm not getting 95 flat, and I think my fill came in around, I think it was in the 95.90s, so nothing to really brag about. I'm maybe 20 cents in the money. But I respected the 3M chart, as if I were to pull up a weekly, I'll give you just a quick breakdown. I've talked about 3M a few times. I know they have litigations. I know they have some sort of lawsuit that they're dealing in with. I look at this as a long-term play. I look at this support over here as a potential buying area to buy some shares. But here's the rundown. I believe that you're in some sort of descending channel. There you are. Is it going to go lower in this? Very well could. Sorry about that. Headset goes out about every 15-20 minutes. But I look at this as a descending channel. Am I buying at support? Yes, I am buying at support in my eyes. Do I have some channel support? Yes, I think it's the bottom end of this channel. Does it need to move down a little bit more, or is there different ways that I could adjust this channel? Maybe it has to come down to 90. But I like this name for the long term. I have a long term mindset with this name, and we'll see where it goes from there. But we added a little bit of 3M shares today. Yeah, other than that, I think I was on the bid for some XLE. We'll see if that. I think I was just had an order off the gap. Doesn't look like I got a fill. There's your gap fill. Nope, no fill. 77 flat was where I was on the bid. Are they going to be good shares bought? I don't know. But it tried to get down the 77 flat. It just couldn't. I think I put the order in for 77 flat somewhere over here. Got to a wick low of 77.25. Looks like I had a nice finish to the day. So had I just put an alert for a break over top of this price, I'm looking at these wicks right here. Maybe I could have bought some shares around 77.75. But who knows? Maybe we have to retrace to these previous lows. Wick gets rejected, and maybe I have another opportunity to buy this, where maybe this is some sort of 5-wave structure that needs to play out, and we do have some support over here that I can respect, right around 75.5. If we go over to the daily chart for this name, It looks like this gap got filled, and there's your support that held. That is the support that I just marked seconds earlier. And we do have a gap fill down at 72. I've talked about this 72 gap. I'm going to play this accordingly. I look at this as a long-term play, and maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm the crazy guy that likes oil. I don't know. But let's go. I think that's all I really had to talk about over here today. Oh, H. Oh, my bad. You know I'm terrible at looking at the chat. I don't know if you're still here. Maybe you can let me know if you're still here. BMR. Okay, we'll start with BMR. I'll shoot you a message that I went over this. What's our time at? Looks like we're 53 minutes in. I'll make sure I shoot you a message that to skip ahead for 53 minutes in. BMR. I know I looked at this earlier today. I marked some levels. Here was that bottom support that I talked about back over here in March of 23. Your bottom support, and it kind of left a wick into that, and then here's your top support wicking into it, resistance, and you have a gap fill right here as well. This is kind of that window. I don't know where this set a close at. Oh man. Yeah, the price was not at this first level where you got these lows over here. This chart doesn't have the full data, but yeah, full red engulfing through into that. I don't know if I would have had the nuts to pull the trigger on this. It would have been tough, but I know it looks like from my descending channel that I marked, this is kind of when the ghost gave up right here. Boom, 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 boom. Full red engulfing right through a level. Where this could have been looked at as a descending wedge, you'd want to see it break over top where, you could have set an alert around this 440. If that gets triggered, okay, maybe there's a level to buy off of, but clearly you didn't get that. Uh, this was trying to hold a support. Boom, boom, boom. Two red engulfing candles right through that to your next level. Would have been hard to pull the trigger on this. But down here around this 250 to 225, maybe you got something there. But still trading inside the channel. The long-term channel looks like this. That is how the long-term channel, and I'm sure you have some sort of uptrend in here that you're also breaking the uptrend as well. So I just don't know if I think you need a little bit more chart information. I'll clear everything off right there. Flip over to the daily chart. You are wicking into a level. 280 could have filled, and you'd be sitting all right. But it would have been tough for me to pull the trigger on this one today. That doesn't mean that there isn't hope for it. It looks like After Hours is trying to reclaim 3. But SoFi, yes, we'll go take a look at SoFi next. SoFi, this is the channel I had drawn. Looks like we got a gap up over top of that. You had a nice bull flag with some good volume, decreasing red volume, holding the levels, holding the previous highs. I just don't know if this name has the juice yet. Is there some sort of maybe this is how the downtrend is supposed to be? I don't know if this is how the ghost yet. Uh, Obviously anything can happen. This was a nice increase in volume. Even if it were to trade down to 550, I would expect this gap and maybe the top of these wicks around that 550 to hold as pretty good support. You also have an uptrend. Where is this some sort of ascending channel that you're also gapping above? That's the price that it gaps to, trades down, gets bought up. Is this something that could be playing? But this is a large slope. I would look at this as you have strength at 213 as well. Uh, is it out of the ghost yet? I don't know. If you're gonna know though, sometime this week, maybe next week. I'd be surprised if this 4 didn't give up. I think there's a lot of share dilution. I think there's a lot of kinks that need to get worked out still. And even if it breaks through this downtrend, I think you're going to have something in the works of this, where this could be your descending channel as well. So if we just clear out everything real quick and just look at this from this perspective, Would it be reasonable to say that this is, a descending channel to the downside? A crack of this potentially coming back down to 350 is not out of the question in my eyes. Uh, I don't know. I think share dilution can be a silent killer that a lot of people don't pay attention to. There is a lot of weight. There is a lot of volume coming into this. The earnings report, obviously, there is some positives. Getting close to that profitability, beating on revenue estimates. Looking forward, it looks like they're estimating even more growth. Still estimating negative. So, how much cash do they have that on their balance sheet? What's their cash burn on a quarterly basis? Are they going to continue to dilute at a north of 20% pace? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Uh, is there worse names to invest in? I'm sure there is. I'm sure there is. Uh, but I'll leave it at that. WLDS. Yes, we did play around with this a little bit today. This is where, mistakes. There are mistakes that you can make. And this could be a mistake that I'm making, but I like the daily candle that's putting a nice increased volume, setting a close near the wick high from Thursday. Let's go into a 15-minute chart where I would say you took out the highs from Thursday. I would say you don't have 3 points of contact, so this could be where my downfall is at. Does it have to retest this wick high? Possibly. That also has some nice support over here, meeting in around a 150. So I like that 150 range. But here is your highs that it's trying to wick into. Here is another high. Here is another high. Is this early signs of an ascending channel? Potentially. Going to the hour chart, I think this presents it a little bit better. Where I would have liked to see this last hour, 30 minutes for this, close to the red, but I also do see some nice support and around that 168. Does it need to fall a little bit lower? Does it need to retrace down to that 150 first? Possibly. We'll go to a 30-minute chart where here's where you're trying to hold those levels. You're kind of giving up the ghost a little bit, but you have these previous highs. Uh, I held it into the close. Is it going to go against me? Maybe. Maybe. We'll see. This isn't one that I would push on to anybody on the channel or on the Twitter or Instagram. But it is a name that I think has some potential. And going into more of the volume factor, you have a lot of increased volume on this move over here. It was able to take out those highs on some nice volume, and it had decreasing volume all the way through. Does that volume come in, and are we able to break over this 225 and maybe get a push up to the top end of the channel? I'm not counting it out yet. So I am in the red on this name a little bit. Like I said, I'm not perfect. I'm just a guy. Uh, but I think the setup is decent, and there's definitely worse names to be in my opinion, of course. Um, would I advise you to go out and freaking dump your money into this? No, no. Uh, if you're able to sit at your computer all day and have some outs that you can go about, I think it's reasonable. So this one is going to be on watch for me tomorrow, and we'll see where it goes. Is there any other names? And Apple to see continued strength sentiment for BMR and WLDS. Apple, let's go take a look at Apple. Gaps up, I think when this, this is a 30 minute. Let's go to a daily chart. I would be careful with this one. I think big tech, does it have strength? Yes. Is it flirting with these highs? If it takes out 180, 350, I would expect it to have some continuation. How high can it go? I don't know. Uh, Apple is a different scenario with some of the big tech as they invest their money very well, which gives them the the EPS increase benefits, and also they're also buying back a lot of shares. So Apple, fundamentally sound company. I have nothing against Apple. I just don't see the value for this name up here. I don't like it as a value play. Can it give you a return? Yes, it very well could. What happens when this uptrend gives up? Man, I just don't know. I don't know. This is a tight uptrend where you have some gaps to the downside. You're getting some big insider selling on this name. If we have to retrace down to these gaps, this uptrend, you're off of it. You're off of it. I just I would be careful messing around with Apple if you're looking at Apple individually as an investment for a long term up here. You got a lot of good volume coming in. I'm not hating on Apple. Is it near a top? I don't know. I think so. Does that mean that it is? No, probably not. Probably not. But Apple, it has strength, has the volume, has the setup, has some levels that you can potentially break over. Uh, yes, there is definitely worse names that you can invest in than Apple. Long term, if you're looking long term, I would be surprised if Apple didn't give you some sort of return as they're buying back a lot of shares and investing their capital very well. Those are the companies you want to hold long term. And Apple is not going anywhere anytime in the next 20 years. Alright, would anyone else be absolutely shocked if Apple wasn't around in 20 years? Yes. Yes. Say what you want about Apple. Maybe you don't like the products, but Apple is not going anywhere anytime soon. But that's what I'd say about Apple is, probably is this a top? I doubt it. I doubt it. So if Apple does good, if there's a direct catalyst with WLDS, I'm all for it. If BMR has direct catalyst with it, maybe that's a catalyst for it to move to the upside as well. I don't know. But this has been a longer live stream than usual. I'm gonna end it there unless there is any other questions that anyone has. And yeah, we will be back here tomorrow. I was a little later than my 2 o'clock normal window, but we'll see. We'll see. Sometimes when you're a little busy, you're not able to live stream, and that's what the case was today. So we'll see you guys in the live stream tomorrow. Have a good one.